Hello and welcome to another Tuesday Talk with Ruby Reese. I'm delighted to be back and on talking shortly with Catherine Griffin from Snout About Cork, all about Christmas with dogs. It's an exciting time of year. It's a stressful time of year. It's one that we've been kind of waiting for months and months and months. I think Catherine is also on the line. Hello, Catherine. Thank you very much for joining me.
Hello, Killian. How the devil are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me on here again.
So am I. In case there's anybody watching in that hasn't already come across you, would you give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Brief. I'll do my best. And those who know, brief is not something I do well. My name is Catherine Griffin. I'm a certified behaviour consultant with the IAABC and the founder of Snout About.
Thank you very much. That was extremely brief. And for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Killian from Ruby Reese. We're an Irish dog brand providing top quality products for your fur babies. And you can check us out at ruby-reese.com after this talk. But first and foremost, we're going to just jump into the topic of Christmas with dogs with a little disclaimer. We are not vets and, we don't know your dog, your personal situation or your family. So if you do have any concerns about your own particular situation, please do speak with a certified professional. And let's kick it off with Christmas with dogs. So dogs tend to like routines, and routines tend to go out the window a little bit at Christmas. So is that a good place to start with that?
That's really
how to look at dogs and Christmas.
Yeah, that's a really good place to start. And that's essentially where we see the breakdown of behaviours potentially occur, or where we start to see our dogs begin to struggle. And it's all the small nuanced pieces that we don't realise that can really highly affect our dogs. And of course, some dogs are more sensitive to these changes than others. Even on their walks, all of a sudden, even with children being off from school, maybe, or the busyness of if you normally take your dog to the shops with you to wait in the car and there's suddenly more people, more commotion, there's lights going up around the place. There's generally more busyness in your local environments. Even the lights and all the sudden strange ornaments appearing in gardens, for a lot of dogs, that can be like, why is all this weird stuff on my walk all of a sudden? And that's not even to take away the immediate environment in which the dog is living in. So even in our own homes, on the build up to Christmas, we tend to be busier. We tend to be a little bit more frantic, a little bit more fast paced. We're doing crazy cleaning routines. We're changing our furniture around, everything that the dog is typically established to and used to. And we know how predictability is so important in helping our dogs manage their stress responses. And all of a sudden, before Christmas Day even hits, before people even start coming to the door, before the tree even goes up, there's already a change in their routine and what they're expecting. And this can cause a lot of anticipatory anxiety in our dogs, because all of a sudden they don't know what's about to happen next.
And I think you've even highlighted a lot of things that I haven't even thought about in kind of preparing for this talk. Like the Christmas tree, like the lights going up around the area. It's not something that because we understand, the traditions involved in Christmas. I suppose we don't find them unusual, but yeah, thinking about it from taking a step back and imagining how a dog sees that is, it must be wild. So I suppose, would you see some level of importance of keeping at least some parts of routine, for example, the bits that they really like the dog walks outside, trying to at least even keep it at the same time of the day, and things like that?
Absolutely. And the problem is, as humans, we're not routine by our nature, and we're not predictable by our nature. But it would be really important, that's a really nice point, Killian, is trying to keep some of the really obvious, important things to your dog as routine as possible. So things like waking habits, feeding routines, make sure they're at the normal same times of day. And as you said, walking routines. So many of our dogs literally sit on tenterhooks knowing that after work it gets to 6 and you take me out, and being able to still keep the routines that we have in place for our dog is really important. And if you don't have a particularly set routine, but you are planning on having social festivities and having people coming over, one of the most important things we can do is start implementing those routines now. So even though we're quite close to Christmas at this stage, start to build predictable routines so the dog knows what's about to occur and when. Dogs are fantastic time tellers, but that's the conversation for another day. And be able to support your dog's responses to its day to day in terms of arousal regulation. So when they can get excited about certain things, and make sure that that is fulfilled at that particular time. So anything we do ahead of Christmas Day, we actually want to start planning and preparing for that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you mentioned, if getting into the routine, getting used to what's about to happen. I suppose if their dog bed does need to move to be replaced by the Christmas tree, if there's no other place in the house for it, then maybe now is a good time to get that going, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, it's really interesting that you bring up the dog bed, because this is one of the first things we need to be teaching our dog in. If we were expecting to have people come over, obviously, with people coming over, there's so much that we need to do to set our dogs up for success. Even if your dog is super social and everyone they normally know and love are the people that are coming over, it's going to be with more regularity. It's going to be with more animation. It's going to be all happy Christmas and lots of voices and lots of hugging and lots of movement. And one of the things that we really want to start teaching our dogs now, it's not too late if you literally start now, is teaching our dog their bed and their place. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm segueing a little bit at this stage, but it's very much about setting their environment up so we can have them in a safe, steady place, and that they feel comfortable, content, and that we can put them in an area within our homes whereby guests aren't going to be walking on top of them. So if your dog bed is normally, say, in the living room or right in the door by the kitchen, where there's going to be a lot of footfall and a lot of foot traffic and people walking past them, have a think about where would be a quieter spot for them to be, where would be more of an appropriate, quiet, safe space for our dogs to be in, and start getting them used to going to that space now. And consider things like beginning mat training, place work, settle training, even the relaxation protocol, to help our dogs understand, okay, when I'm in this space, I'm safe, no one's on top of me, and I can essentially go there to just have some chill out time. It's a bit like, I know for Christmases of past, when it got too busy for me, if there was a room I could go into where nobody bothered me, it would be a really nice area to go to just go, okay, I've got this, I can relax, I can go here to unwind, decompress, lower arousal before joining back in certain aspects of the festivities.
And I suppose especially for dogs that don't have a wild household, usually with lots of people going around, even Ruby's used to us working during the day. It's normally a quiet, fairly mundane environment to be in. It's definitely not all tinsel and people are running around the place, even though I'm sure plenty of people imagine our house is like that. It's actually, kind of a very much kind of an office day. So she's very used to her routines in that sense. And you mentioned about setting up spaces as well. Yeah. Do you want to talk about different spaces? And, I suppose the retreating space is how I kind of like to see what you were mentioning as well. The space that they can kind of go into to have their own time as well.
Yeah. And so this is where all the planning and the preparation comes in. Go find your favorite middle aisle and go buy a baby gate. There's always baby gates in middle aisles. Baby gates are one of the must-have things if you have a dog, essentially. And the problem is with modern human living, like my own space is pretty open plan, just with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. So it's quite difficult to separate and segregate space. But even if it's a baby gate across a hallway or access into the kitchen, so somewhere where the dog can be just with immediate family and not with all the guests that you have coming over to the home. So getting your dog established now to that baby gated area, because the problem is as well, when you're cooking or you're hosting or you're trying to enjoy the festivities yourself, and it's really important to remember that these steps are put in place to help the dog owner too, because you don't want eyes in the back of your head. You want to be able to relax as well. So by knowing that our dog is separated and segregated is going to be a big stress relief for us. And if we just close the door and we've got a visual barrier, it's going to potentially make things a lot worse for your dog. It can make them feel isolated, excluded. They could find it punishing. So getting a baby gate in place, finding that area in your home where your dog can go to quite safely for their relaxed downtime, so you don't have to have eyes in the back of your head constantly managing and monitoring your dog around guests. Building that up at this stage, so you're teaching them an in by literally with the baby gate open saying in, and they go in, you drop them something nice, and teach them an out cue as well. Out, good job, and give them something nice. In, give them 2 nice things. Out, nothing, just praise. In, 2 treats. Out, praise. And get them used to going in and out and do all your settle mat training pieces in this area. Again, allowing them visual access to the wider things of what's going on, but in a space where you don't have to worry about people putting their hands all over your dog, being too full on with them. Even with the best intentions, we all know as dog owners, we get people who come over to our homes and get our dogs unintentionally G'd up because we're excited. And obviously Christmas, there can be a little bit of booze flowing. And we don't want to risk any incidents of people coming over and thinking that getting our dogs G'd up and excited is a positive thing. It's actually more of a stress response, and it should all be about keeping your dog as relaxed as possible. And then, of course, there's the whole dramas with the front door and doors knocking more, doorbells. I'd actually recommend people disable their door alarms and doorbells and ask everybody prior to arriving, will you actually just throw the text so I know you're here, or just, let yourself in, but keep your dog in that safe space at that time. So we're avoiding additional triggers and stimulus that might upset our dogs. And when we do have our dogs come out to greet people, we're keeping them on lead. We're asking people not to be in their face and all over them. And try and remember to be the treats giver yourself as the dog's owner, rather than asking everyone coming through the door to treat your dog, because then we're just going to build further anticipatory excitement about dogs coming in and being like, oh, guests, they're exciting, but they now also have food, and now I'm way over threshold because there's too much excitement going on.
Definitely. So, I think that's one of the main points I wanted to get to anyway, was, how can we ourselves be good guests in a sense? It's I think it's important as well, even as dog owners, ourselves, we don't necessarily know everyone's dog. For example, I haven't met your dog Indy, so say I'm calling over to yours over Christmas, how do I then be an exemplary guest and make the situation a really positive one for everyone?
Yeah, that's such a nice question, actually. And it's one that's so often missed when we're talking about these things. The best thing to do is, number one, ask the dog's owner, is there anything that I need to know about your dog in particular? And for some dogs, like when you do come over to mine over Christmas, Khalid, I have a protocol in place for Indy. But the best thing to do is just ask that sort of information. When you come through the door, don't lurch over the dog like, oh, hi, how are you? Like, this is it's too much, it's too overwhelming. And ideally, as the dog owner, we want to have the dog either separate from the front door, because at this time of year in particular, it's quite triggering. But as the guest, generally try and just remember, keep your hands in your pockets and just talk to the dog. Be hello, how are you? But not anything too exuberant, and actually just try and ignore them. And allow for the dog's owner to do the management interaction pieces, to be able to control the dog. Now, the problem is when we've got families as well, a lot of the time, everybody could be sat at the table going, sit, stay, get to your bed, do this, do that. And other people are treating and confusing and complicating the training. So literally having a set of rules that you can send to your friends and family over WhatsApp and be like, okay, my dog's potentially going to be a bit stressed, so I am the primary responsible person. So establishing one person in the home as a primary responsible person on each event that you do, whether it's Stephen's Day, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, whatever, that person is ultimately in control of the dog and what they do, allowing them access to people and allowing them to take time away to relax. And just having that primary one person in control of them all the time can be really, really important. But I think from the guest's perspective, to be really sound and nice to the dog, it's actually to leave them alone. Our dogs will give off a lot of information that looks like happy, waggy, excitable dogs. And unless you're weirdos like we are that literally spend our lives studying dog behavior and understanding these communications and nuanced body language pieces, we can't expect everyone to be able to read our dogs. And a lot of the time, this very excited, exuberant communication can actually be a signal that a dog's not doing very well and they're feeling overwhelmed. So the best thing we can do as guests is actually just leave them be. Don't try and engage them in lots of play. Don't try and treat them. And I think, again, for the dog owners, having a really controlled piece of information for all guests about treating the dog is going to be important because of course, the amount of toxic foods available at this time of year to our dogs.
Absolutely. And I think it's an important point, about almost, I don't want to say training our guests, but almost, it's about informing them about what's going to help the dog the most. We try our best to get our friends and visitors to contain themselves a little bit at the front door, like you mentioned, and take that first interaction away from the front door, so that the hellos then happen in the living room, and it takes the initial kind of bite out of the whole situation. And you mentioned about foods, treating foods. So let's get into it. I mean, what are the dangers with the typical foods around Christmas, and what do we need to really watch out for? Not just because they're, someone might be reinforcing a behavior that you don't necessarily want, but because it could be a situation where a vet is needed, or more serious than that again.
Yeah. And again, like this, oh my goodness, I've all the dogs I've had have gorging behaviors, and we don't actually have any research about gorging and why it occurs, but I've always had gorges, and my dogs have always ended up in hospital, usually under the care of somebody else when doing where food is involved, or potentially toxic food. I know even recently when I was away in Dublin, my boy Indy stole a mince pie. So my dog sitter rang me and was like, "Oh, the little gift, she stole a mince pie." And I was like, "A mince pie? Great, raisins." And the thing is, we don't know exactly what it is in a lot of these ingredients that causes these reactions in our dogs. We do know that it affects some dogs more than others. We also know it's nothing to do with the size or the weight of the dog either. So there's a lot of these toxic foods around. If you think mince pies, Christmas puddings, turkey bones, things like this, cooked bones are not okay to be giving to our dogs. And obviously with turkey bones and things like that, they're small, they can splinter and get stuck and caught, or even caught in the roof of the mouse. When you've taken the foil off and you've just scrumpled it up and put it in the bin, your dog could ingest that as well. They're the big ones: chocolate, coffee. There's going to be more alcohol available, and maybe some human medications as well lying around that your dogs might get. And certain types of nuts. We all know peanut butter and almond butter and things like this can be really, really beneficial for our dogs. But then there's certain nuts like macadamia and stuff like that that are not going to be good for our dogs and are going to potentially make them quite sick. So it's important that we just keep areas clean, tidy. And when you think about all that fat from all the different meats that you're cooking, from your dog's perspective, your home's going to smell amazing. Behaviorally, when our dogs are under more stress, when they may feel overwhelmed by what's happening, it's also likely that we might see an increase in certain behaviors, such as resource guarding behaviors as well. So our dogs may be more likely to display these behaviors because of the environment, but also because of the types of foods that are around them at the time. So a dog who would normally take a bit of tinfoil and you ask them to trade or swap or switch might comply in that situation or be able to communicate with you. But in an escalated situation, they might not. And then the problem is when we push them, we don't want the dog to consume the tinfoil, then we're going to the vets. So being really mindful, managing food things. Even if you have a Christmas tree, don't keep presents that are food-based under the tree, because it's just going to be too big a temptation for your dog to get any of these things.
It sounds so basic, but we all make these mistakes. It's so easy just to not think for a split second what's actually under that wrapping paper. And the dog will certainly know how to sniff that out. And I suppose, you mentioned a lot of things about a lot of ingredients that can cause really, really serious allergic reactions. And I think it's definitely worthwhile. I think everyone that's watching in that has a dog, it would be so worthwhile in today or tomorrow, like, know the inside of, the color of the inside of your dog's mouth and what their tongue looks like, know what their paws look like, know what their belly normally looks like, have a quick look into their eyes, just so you know what these things actually look like. Because, for example, if you look into a dog's mouth and you see that its gums have gone completely white, that's a really good indication that you need a vet pretty soon. So if you don't know what your dog's lips normally look like, then you're not going to be able to identify these things.
Yeah, definitely. And monitoring stools, drinking, all these kinds of things, drinking water, that is, just making sure that all their normal bodily functions and physical presentations, as you said, such as gums and things like that, they're all in check and they're all good. And of course, if you don't know what your emergency out of hours vet number is, find that now and keep it on a post-it on your fridge or put it in your phone so you have it there ready to go.
That's actually a really good point, because ours has changed, and I think a lot of our followers around here, around the Cork area, will be very aware that some of the out of hours ones have changed recently. So it might be worthwhile giving that a Google now rather than later. And so I suppose the main rule anyway is again, in training your guests about giving foods from the table. No is the answer for just willy-nilly treating from the table, and always ask if you really, really want to give a treat, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about food and how we can use food throughout Christmas in a positive way. So essentially, when we're preparing for Christmas, as I said, prepare now. So start to separate your house up with a baby gate. Find your dog's safe space, essentially, not your entire home. You don't need to be completely dramatic. And bear in mind, this is to give you, the dog owner, peace of mind, as well as keep your dog safe and your guests safe, is the prevention piece. Baby gate up, find that bed area, reinforce your dog for going on the bed, get your dog used to having that baby gate shut for small moments of time and extending on the duration of that. Email or WhatsApp your guests to tell them, so we're doing this thing with our dog, and if anybody ever wants help putting something like that together, just give me a shout, info@snoutoutabout.ie, and I can help you construct something. And then when the guests come, as we said, front door, disable the door alarm. Don't let people ring that. Let them know when you're coming. Open the door. Don't let the dog greet the guests at the door. Let the dog greet people in more of an open space rather than the direct hallway or any narrow area. Even if you live in a spacious house, sometimes even the furniture, from the dog's eyeline perspective, it can look quite enclosed, so it can take away a dog's potential sense of autonomy to be able to escape or remove themselves from that situation.
Sure.
Keep the treating from the owners only, not from other people. Assign somebody to look after that dog in particular. So one of the dog's owners or the dog's owner to look after that dog then. Use your dog's lead if you need to as well. So if you're worried about a dog who's particularly rambunctious and you don't want them jumping on elderly guests or very small young guests, then use their lead in that situation so they can say hello and they can greet people in a calm manner that's not going to cause further disturbance. But then we also want to look at how can we keep our dogs occupied using their food when our guests are there, and to prevent them from struggling and whimpering and whining or barking or jumping or trying to get to them. And this is where we look at enrichment-based activities. So start testing these things out now. Don't wait till Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. We want to start testing and playing around with what works for our dog, because what works for Ruby is very different to what works for Indy, who's just there behind me. The slurpy noise of him, not me. He has a Kong. So we want to make sure that the enrichment that we're giving them is actually enriching. So we measure enrichment by the after effect. Is our dog soothed? Is our dog fulfilled? If the enrichment we give our dog frustrates them or gets them even more aroused and more giddy, then it's not enriching for them. So test all these things out now. And whilst they're in their little area that we've made for them, think about providing them with something like a stuffed Kong, Toppler, canine connectable. I'm just trying not to like be one brand specific when I say these things. That chewing action, as well as licking and lapping, it induces relaxation and it promotes serotonin production. So it helps our dogs feel calm. That's why when our dogs are quite stressed, they might chew on furniture or something like that. So we need to give them options for things to chew on. So when it comes to the big day, make sure that they have their normal routine in place, but maybe look back at cutting down on their morning feeds. Maybe now start cutting back on the amount of food they get in one sitting and increase their feeds to 5 feeds a day using the same amount of food. So it's not strange and alien to them on the day. But the way we give these foods is different. So you can use a snuffle mat, you can scatter it in your back garden, you can use brain games, things that are going to get them using this, because this is essentially that prefrontal cortex action, that kind of problem solving piece is essentially what's going to help our dogs feel calm, collected and refocused, not just distracted, but in a way that they can refocus and they can be independently explorative and engaged in an activity whilst all the commotion's going on behind them. But if we only present these things to our dogs on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, whenever the busy time is, then they may be too frustrated and aroused to be able to work it out. So then it's not enriching and it's not functional. We need to trial these things prior to the big day and focus on mental stimulation brain games, focus on chewing and focus on licking and lapping behaviors to ultimately soothe them down. And you can just get your normal dog's food, mush it up with some hot water into a paste and use that, or some of your favorite treats for your dog, mush them up with hot water, and use enrichment wisely. I think one of the big mistakes a lot of people make when they're having people come over is, I need to exert my dog's physical energy. I need to run the hind legs off of them so they're exhausted. Exhaustion occurs as the result of prolonged exposure to stress. We don't want exhaustion, we want relaxation. If you go to the gym and you run a HIIT class course or do some cardio, you're not going to relax afterwards. You're going to feel pumped and ready to take on the world. So by taking our dogs out and being like, oh, the guests are coming over in an hour, ball thrower, fetch, 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 we're actually just pumping our dogs full of cortisol and adrenaline and all that stress soup that essentially we are wanting to avoid. So do make sure their needs are met in terms of physical exercise, taking them out, letting them engage with their environment, having a run around or whatever is appropriate for that particular dog, but don't overdo it. If you overdo it, you're going to end up with the kid who had too much fun at the party and now they're all crying.
Absolutely.
So,
I'm sure, like, I presume a kind of a calming sniff around the neighborhood is probably going to be a lot more beneficial, like you say, than pumping them with a game of fetch or something like that just before anyway.
yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And as I said, really focusing on those calming, soothing things that our dogs can do. But again, as I said earlier, in moments of sort of, if the immediate environment is different and the dog feels particularly stressed, there is potential for that to exacerbate or create guarding problems. So anytime the dog has one of these high value things, or if you check out Atlas and Tail are an independent female-owned Irish company that do amazing, natural, long-lasting treats for our dogs. So things like that could be really good, like ostrich bone, which is like a low-fat, collagen-full thing that they can chomp their teeth into, or cow's ears and things like this.
Yeah. I was going to say beef ears is exactly what you just said.
Beef ears, yeah, they're fantastic.
Ruby loves them, yeah.
He likes the hairy ones. He's disgusted. But they are really high value. They're really good, but they're high value. So guests, children in particular, it's a no-go zone when your dog has these things. And the problem is, again, as I said, we can't trust everyone, every member of our family to actually adhere to what we're saying. Even I get this with members of my own family. Some of them are barred from my house because they just won't listen to me with my dog. So you have to make sure people are aware not to go to your dog, but actually put a physical barrier in place. Something as simple as a baby gate. Like this is like a no-go zone for guests. So your dog can go there when they need that time.
Cool. And you mentioned a lot of different types of enrichment. What do you think of these quite complex, cool looking puzzle type gimmicks? I don't know what they are. There's just quite complicated ones that you see online, and they look great on TikToks and Reels. But do you think these tend to be more for us than for the dogs, or?
You know, it's funny. It's actually quite dog dependent.
Mm-hmm.
So some dogs will meticulously go through, but the second they know it, they know it. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't extend on that. For a dog like Indy, for example, I'd almost imagine Ruby would be the same. Like, he's a bulldozer. He picks it up and he flings it against the wall. So my 50-euro dog training toy is now broken, but he still got what he wanted. He got all the Ruby Reese treats out of it at the end of the day.
Exactly. I think Ruby's much the same. She, with the Kong wobbler, she tends to attack the wobbler until the treats come out, no matter what way they are. I think much more calming for her in particular is this kind of searching behavior. So the snuffle mats are very calming for her and very engaging for her. Like you mentioned, scattering treats or food in the garden and longer grass is great for her. At this time of year, the grass tends to be wet and she doesn't like that. So we've got a lovely stairs that we can kind of like scatter food up, and then she goes sniffing it out. It takes her quite a while to find it in all the different steps. So there's different things, but it's searching for her. So I guess it makes a lot of sense that they're frustrated.
And it does. And that's it. So that's those other games aren't enriching for Ruby, because they don't have the behavior afterwards doesn't have the desired effect or outcome. Mm-hmm. Same with Indy, like, I just throw it and smash it. But what you can do, and if you have children visiting as well that you need to keep company and they're interested in your dog, one of the best things you can do is actually get your recycling bin. And this is one of the best things about Christmas, is the packaging. There is packaging galore everywhere. So be mindful of some packaging, obviously ribbon, sellotape, non-branded sticky tape, and decorations and things like this that might be on there. They're not going to be good for our dogs, essentially. But if you've got cardboard boxes, provided you're careful and nothing is a potential choking hazard, some dogs will eat all of that, so that's not appropriate. But for some dogs, they're not going to. For a lot of dogs, they won't. Get the kids involved in getting a cardboard box, getting some kitchen tubes from the foil for the turkey, or all the extra toilet roll tubes that you're getting through because of everybody in your house, and create some kind of like mad big like snowman made out of boxes. But he's got like a tube for a nose, and you're putting your treats in there and you're presenting it to your dog then to pull all this apart. So it can be a good fun activity for the kids to do. Be like, okay, I've got an idea, let's create a Christmas snowman out of boxes for the dog, but it's going to be like a robot snowman with tubes.
Yes, and I can imagine kids really wanting to get involved in that, because make and do is already something that they really enjoy doing. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea.
Exactly, and it gives them a little activity to focus on as well. And then we give it to the dog, and we can all be like, "Yay, well done, puppy!" Because they're ripping it apart. So dogs having fun, kids having fun. Your recycling's getting squashed as well. That's always a good thing to do.
And then I guess one of the final pieces to the puzzle is guests arriving with dogs that haven't met your dog before. How do we feel about this? I can imagine this being a high energy situation that needs to be diffused. How could we approach that?
Send them home. Okay, so essentially, and again, it depends on the individual family, the individual dogs, the individual context of what's happening in that particular situation. A few vets that I've spoken to have said that the number one reason that dogs end up calling the emergency out of hours vet services around the festive Christmas period, everyone thinks, oh, it must be chocolate or ingesting something. It's dog to dog fights. Oh, wow. Because of situations like this, and because of dogs in the household as well. So even dogs who get on very well together with all that additional access to resources, heightened behaviors around resources, heightened anxiety or frustration or arousal, dog-to-dog fights are a big thing. So if somebody is coming in with another dog, again, I would recommend that you take your dog outside to meet them out the front, on lead, little snippy walk together, potentially bring them in, but I would actually recommend keeping them separate. I don't think it's an appropriate time to do dog introductions at all. I just think we're setting ourselves up and our dogs up to fail in those situations. Again, it's very dependent. So when I'm asked questions like this, I see those kind of case scenarios because of the types of dogs maybe I would normally work with, but I'm just thinking, unless it's a familiar dog, and even if it is a familiar dog, I still wouldn't be trying to push interactions on them. And it's probably best actually to just keep them separate. Like going on walks is different. Having outdoor space is that little bit different. But if it's early in the day before things have really kicked off, then it's different. But if it's like after dinner and, you know, your uncle and your aunties are fighting and there's lots of noise and commotion, children running around and it's busy, it's not going to be appropriate. And I think one of the biggest takeaways to remember is your dog doesn't have to join in the festivities. As you said at the beginning, our dogs ain't aware it's Christmas. And, you know, forcing them to take pictures and group situations and stuff like this, unless they're a dog who is very willing and happy to do those things. If there's more commotion in your home than there normally is, just be so mindful that this is probably really bugging your dog out. And we want to appreciate and respect their boundaries and give them space and not put them in situations that might be uncomfortable for them.
Definitely, yeah. It's you know, when you actually step back and think about it, it must be a really weird, stressful time of year for dogs that don't understand what the Santa lights are outside and things like that. So yeah, I guess setting them up for success is the best way to go. Like most things with dogs, and trying to make the most out of the time of year, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. And actually, Annie Ed, I'm always shouting Annie Ed out because they're so fantastic. They are running a great series at the minute called Christmas Bites. I made a scribble of it. So if you go to Annie Ed, which is ANIED, so animal education, annieireland.com/Christmas.bites, bites spelled BITES. Or follow them on social media. We share a lot of their stuff, so you can find it through Snout About, but they're on Instagram and Facebook. They're doing a really on point educational piece around how to prepare and set up for all these individual steps. I can't do better than Annie Ed do on this particular one, so I'm just going to share their stuff. It already exists.
Absolutely, I love Annie Ed.
Phenomenal.
And I'm delighted to be able to share their latest post as well after this, so that anyone can check it out on the stories as well. Catherine, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your knowledge with us.
You're fine. 1 second.
Sorry,
1 second. I'm just.
Does that happen to be a Ruby Reese conditioning spray?
Mimosa Blossom, good for your dog trainer.
You're crazy. Thank you so much. People, if you're looking to find Catherine, you can get to her at Snout About Cork. Is that correct? On Instagram?
Snout About Cork, yes. Or if you're living further afield, we have Snout About Kerry, and we have Snout About Kilkenny and South East as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful evening and looking forward to speaking to you soon.
Speak to you soon. Thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.